Hi everyone, I'm Joe. I'm head of conversion at Launch. If you've never heard of Launch before, we're a digital performance agency based in the Southwest. This is me and my big cheesy grin at our Bristol HQ. That's me and the rest of the team. And today I want to talk about workshops, specifically within the kind of prism of CRO, but if you don't work directly in CRO, there should hopefully be some useful stuff in here too for you. I've been working in CRO and general digital marketing for about 10 years now, and for about 5 years, I've been leading and facilitating workshops. And through a lot of trial and error, I've learned a few things along the way, and I'm hoping to share some of those learnings with you. So before I get into it, I want to just provide you with a little bit of context. So cast your minds back 5 years. We're in 2018, and this is the boardroom of an agency in Bristol called St. Nick's. We've just won a really exciting new web build project for a very well-known caravan retailer. And things aren't going very well. The project's got off to a very rocky start because there's loads of stakeholders involved. The existing website's got tons of issues and lots of legacy problems. So we really needed a breakthrough. So we decided to gather in a room a project manager, a UI designer, developer, 2 marketing managers from the client side, a UX designer, and a digital strategist, and that's me. And you'll notice that I'm not in this picture, and that's because on the day I was co-facilitating, and that involved taking pictures. So I'm behind the camera, and Johnny, my good friend, was leading the workshop. So we gathered in a room, and we used actual physical pens to write on real sticky notes and stuck them on a real whiteboard. Very old school. And I think this was the moment, if I can pinpoint one moment where I really fell in love with the idea of workshops, because in the space of 2 hours, we managed to solve a problem that had been plaguing us for about 2 months. And still up to this point in my career, I haven't come across a technique which is as effective at solving problems in real time. So back in 2018, face-to-face workshops really were the norm, and they're great for building rapport, face-to-face contact, building relationships, building trust. You get all of those non-verbal cues and non-verbal communication in a room face-to-face with people that you might not get over a Teams chat. And also, it's much easier to maintain positive energy levels in the room when you're physically moving around a space and you're sticking stuff on a board. Much easier to keep that energy level high. So through 2019, I was running loads of workshops, probably about 1 per week on average, I'd say. Even got to the point where we needed to laminate a Pret menu from the nearby Pret so we could pass that around at lunchtime and take orders much more easily. This was kind of my life, doing a lot of face-to-face workshops in 2019. A few months later, a pesky little virus came along and changed everything forever. And obviously you know what happened next. An entire workforce told to stay at home, businesses suddenly scrambling to figure out how to remain productive in a world which is suddenly remote first. So we had to respond to that, and overnight our workshops changed from what you've just seen to something a little bit more like this. And this is a board that we built in Miro, and all of a sudden we weren't just doing workshops with people in the southwest of England, we were doing workshops with people in the US, in Germany, in Australia. It opened up this kind of new world of workshops, and it actually opened my eyes to a fact that I wasn't aware of before, which is face-to-face workshops may have been holding us back quite a lot. Things like geographic distance between participants, the time it takes to actually travel and meet those people, the cost, the budget involved in paying for flights, train, renting a space, restrictions in terms of health issues or accessibility, family responsibilities at home, and travel disruption. All these reasons why it might actually have always been a little bit impractical to do in-person, face-to-face workshops. So this new norm of working from home actually changed workshops for the better, in my opinion, which kind of leads me to my first takeaway. When you're deciding how to run a workshop, it's really important that you pick carefully between doing something in person, face-to-face, or doing it online. There are definite pros and cons to both approaches. If you really need to have that extra care and attention, you need to build relationships, maybe there's a lot of business change going on, or it's a sensitive topic, doing it face-to-face, if you can, is really beneficial. But at the same time, Doing it remotely means that you can generally include more people, especially with global businesses or businesses where people are working in distributed teams. It can be a lot more inclusive to do it online. More inclusive means you get greater diversity in the room. The more divergent the thinking, the richer the insights. So yeah, make sure you kind of think carefully between both. So in 2020, or the beginning of 2020, you can see this interest in online whiteboards just exploded. And the user base for, and this isn't just an advert for Miro, but Miro, the biggest sort of provider of online whiteboards, their user base went from, is now 35 million, and in 2020, and between 2020 and 2022, it grew over 600%. So this just massive explosion in online whiteboard demands went through the roof. And if those 35 million users are anything like me, at the beginning of me transitioning to going to online workshops, I wasn't perfect by any means at the beginning, and it only takes one workshop that doesn't go so well for someone to think that was just a waste of time. And I don't know if you may have been in a workshop which felt a little bit flat or a little bit directionless potentially, and maybe like a meeting that could have been an email kind of thing. But in truth, the only workshops that are a waste of time are the ones that are not well thought through. So just a tiny bit of planning will save you buckets. So the first thing you might want to do when considering what kind of workshop to run, especially if you're a CRO, is decide on what kind of workshop that is. And there are tons of different types. I generally use these 12 in a cycle. There are some that I do more than others, but there are planning types, discovery types, mapping types, ideation, prioritization, and I try and make sure I employ these. If there's a meeting that feels like it should be deciding what we should do rather than just reporting on numbers, then I'll try and turn it into a workshop, basically. On a side note, if you would like any of the templates for these, you can just add me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to share them with you. But as much as I'd love to go into great detail as to what each of these different workshops are, we don't have time. And also, I think what's more valuable is understanding what underpins a good workshop, no matter the type of workshop, right? So what do they all have in common? So that's what we're going to spend the rest of this session looking at. So the first thing you want to do, this seems like real basic stuff, but you'll be surprised how little that actually happens. Sending an email a week out of the workshop and just introducing yourself, explaining who you are, what your role is in this workshop, and giving all of the participants a really clear idea of what's going to happen in that workshop. And also provide a link to the tool that you're going to be doing or using for the session if it's virtual. And there are tons of quick explainer videos you can provide. You don't have to do it yourself. You can just let the participants do that themselves. Provide them with a really cheesy video of you waving through the screen. That's great. It gets them familiar with your face, but also the space that you'll be using. I quite like to use Vidyard, but there's also Loom for this. There's free tools that you can use. It just gets them familiar with the environment that you'll be using. So I can't emphasize enough, just a little bit of planning will go so far on the day, just to set expectations and prepare your participants. So next up, I would like to, you've got your plan of what you're going to do. How do you prepare the workspace? And if you're doing it virtually, again, the most important thing is making sure up front people know who you are and what your role is in that room, especially if you've never met before. And if this is a workshop with multiple stakeholders, you may have never met these people. You may just have one contact in that room. So be clear about who you are, and also get your excuses in early that you might be a bit of a taskmaster, a bit of a time enforcer, and say that if things, it's your job to keep things on time, so don't take it personally if I have to move the conversation on. And my pro tip for this is to use this ideas car park, right? So if conversation's derailed, or if someone's kind of going off topic, or they're just stubbornly hanging on an idea, you can just say, okay, great, we're just going to park that idea, put that in the ideas car park, and make sure that person feels listened to at least, and then that you can move on the conversation and always come back to it later. Okay, icebreakers. Icebreakers and British people don't mix. People tend to hate them. They find them awkward and horrible. So I tend to not call them icebreakers. I tend to call them something like a warm-up or a pre-activity. But yeah, I mean, what's worse than just a tiny bit of awkwardness is having a room full of people who are not talking at all. So you just spend 5 minutes, and you can use a silly question like, one of my favorites is, what's your favorite biscuit and why? Or what was your first job and what did you learn in that first job? or what's your favorite karaoke song / band, or your favorite movie. Please don't judge me. But it doesn't really matter what the question is so much, as long as it's just a playful device to get people to open up a little bit and get them to share and break their silence. As soon as someone's spoken for the first time, they're far more likely to contribute a second time. And also, it gets them familiar with the tool if you ask them to fill in one of the post-it notes. Emoji reactions. People love emoji reactions. So point them out at the beginning and make sure people know where they are, because they will definitely use them. And workshop objectives. I think, in my experience, a problem's far more likely to be solved if you clearly state what that problem is up front and make it front and center. So you should have a good idea at this point what those objectives are, right? But make sure you read them out at the beginning so that everyone has a chance to either agree or disagree or add to what those objectives are, so that there's no kind of, chance to have dissent at the end of the session when, well, I didn't even agree with this. So you kind of make sure that you state those clearly at the beginning. And also, it's really important that you create this psychological safety so that people feel comfortable in the room. And so I don't press this too hardly, but I try and mention that we have guidelines to try and be respectful. We're looking for progress, not for perfection. It doesn't have to be right first time. Be present. Try to turn off your email notifications. Don't be distracted by Teams or Slack. And also share the air. Don't just speak for yourself the whole time. Let other people have a chance. And lastly, in terms of the board design, and this goes for whether it's in person or online, it just needs to be functional. It doesn't need to be a work of art. So don't get too strung up about it looking amazing. As long as it's easy to use and it's clear what everything is and it's labeled, it really doesn't need to be any fancier than that. So the third takeaway is create psychological safety, get people talking, and it doesn't need to be a work of art. You might think the next topic is going to be mostly focused on content, like what do we actually fill this board with? But your role as a facilitator is to try and enable that content to happen and people to contribute things to add to the board. So to an extent, that will take care of itself. So I'm more focused, and I think what's more useful is to look at different behaviors and tactics that you can use as a facilitator to get people to contribute that content for you. So I've noticed over the years a few different behaviors, myself included, which kind of come up quite frequently. The four most common behaviors which are really unhelpful and how to avoid them. So the first one we're going to look at is talking too much, which is quite ironic. Talking too much, which is something I really did at the beginning of workshop facilitation because I was so nervous and anxious that no one was going to say anything and contribute to the session that I would tend to ask a question, and then if no one responded literally immediately, then I would fill that gap with an answer. So I'd kind of answer my own question, which is really terrible behavior. But yeah, it came from a place of anxiety, but you can't do that because it shuts down conversation. Although it might be tempting, you have to make sure you don't speak first and share an opinion on everything. Stop talking. Once you've asked an open-ended question, and open-ended questions I like to use are things like what if or how might we, really broad open questions which are not closed questions, yes or no answers. And then when you get one response, allow that person to say something and try and be an active listener, really understand what they've said. And you can paraphrase what they've said so you can make sure you've got the right articulation of what the idea is. And then someone else in the room might add to that, hopefully. And make sure you don't sort of interject or share too much of an opinion at the beginning, which can be tempting sometimes, but really is important to make sure that you get a shared opinion in the room. So try and be as objective as possible. The next behavior is around energy in the room. So that's like an example of what a board could look like at the end of a session or at the end of multiple sessions. And that's a lot of work that goes into a board like that, right? And I used to think that the measure of a session or the measure of the success of a workshop was how many activities or how many post-it notes were stuck on that board at the end of the session, which really isn't the case. Like, that shouldn't be the only measure of success. If you cram as many activities as possible into the session, you're just going to exhaust everyone. They're going to leave deflated, and again, they're going to kind of feel like workshops are not really their thing. So you want people to leave feeling energized and like they want to do another one. So don't cram as many activities as possible into the hour or two that you have with the people. Try and balance out the flow of the workshop with doing active and passive things. So what I mean by that is when you're When you're doing an active part of the workshop, you're asking all of the participants to contribute. You're asking them questions, and you're expecting them to add things to the board. A passive part of the workshop is when they get a chance to rest. You might be explaining what the next activity is. You might be summarizing what the contributions were from the previous activity, or you might be giving examples of the kinds of things you're looking for. So essentially, it gives everyone in the room just a chance to breathe, rest their brains, recuperate. And also, if you're running a session which is anywhere near 2 hours, maybe even an hour and a half, please plan in a 5 to 10 minute comfort break. It's just inhumane to not do that. So just make sure, otherwise people will just start leaving on their own accord. So make sure you try and, oh, and also if the session feels like you've just got too much to do in one session, break it into two. Don't expect that you'll be able to get it all done in 1 or 2 hours. Break it out, chunk it out into 2 sessions, maybe make them 2 hours. And also, if the session really has more than, say, 8 people, I would highly recommend you have a co-facilitator in the room to help with managing the flow of conversation and also sort of sticky notes and also any technical problems. So the next behavior is, I used to expect that this is what a workshop would look like, where everyone was in complete utopia and agreement and happy and, oh yeah, this is great. Not the case at all. People will probably disagree with each other. It's just natural, especially in a business. And I even had someone say this. I actually had someone say that in one of my workshops one time, which was really hard for me to hear, but I was like, okay, internalize that and take a moment. They were German, so it was kind of a cultural thing, but but no, it was the reason they said it was they had a very good reason, and it was because their product and their whole area, their whole department was going through a complete overhaul, right? So they were saying that they thought that this part of the information architecture really needed to be addressed a couple of months after they've done that. And after we discovered that, it completely changed the flow of the conversation, and we decided to kind of go in a different route. So if they hadn't shared that information, we may have never had that breakthrough. So try not to shut down disagreement and move on quickly. Make sure you embrace constructive conflict, because that's where some of the best breakthroughs can come from. And if there is someone who is being very stubborn, or you feel like is kind of just making a point that's not necessarily on topic, you can use that ideas car park that I mentioned earlier on. Just park it there and come back to it later. The last behavior is around hippos. Right, so you probably heard this expression before, the highest paid person's opinion. So this is a real danger in workshops, is that if you invite someone into the room who is very senior and also extrovert potentially, then they will dominate the conversation. So if you have a room full of, say, 8 people, it can quite quickly feel like just a conversation between 2 people, and that's really not somewhere you want to be. So make sure that you're not just letting that, and again, this is quite hard to do if you're just starting with workshop facilitation, because it's quite easy to let someone dominate that conversation. So don't just cater for the hippos and the extroverts. Make sure everyone gets a say in the room. And you can do that by, and some people will really dislike this, but actually making sure that you call someone out by name and say, oh, you haven't contributed for a while, what were your thoughts? Or if someone looks like they want to say something, that's what I was talking about with those non-verbal cues. Someone might just look like they want to say something, they don't quite have the confidence to say it. Just ask them, suggest that they contribute and make sure everyone gets to say. So those are the 4 behaviors. So yeah, there's no magic to workshop facilitation. You don't need to be an extrovert naturally. It is simply a series of behaviors and tactics that you can use if you practice empathy and create a process that removes guesswork and works for you. Now, in the last minute I have, I just really wanted to make the case for why this is so important for CROs to begin with and why you should kind of care about this. Earlier this year, Spiro conducted a survey with 119 different companies who were running experimentation programs, and they asked them, what's the single biggest challenge holding back experimentation in your business? And the 3rd most popular response was greater collaboration between teams and the wider company. So I don't know about you, but there are so many expectations on CROs these days, and often that's why they get broken up into many different roles. But a lot of the sort of skills that you see, especially ones that are in highest demand, tend to be more technical, hard skills, right? And soft skills like workshop facilitation, often you don't really hear that much about, or don't get prioritized so much in job descriptions and training programs. But I think that's wrong, and I think that there needs to be a greater focus on workshop facilitation and honing those soft skills, because they are just as, if not more crucial, for building that collaboration and building support for CRO across an organization. So Also shouldn't stop you if you think that there's not budget for this. There are lots of free tools online. There are free, there's a training academy from Miro. There are also options which don't cost as much, like FigJam and Canva. And also there's a facilitation study guide I put together there, which has got some really cool resources. Most of them are free apart from the one at the bottom. So yeah, there's no reason why you can't get started with this. And also, if you've never done it before, I would recommend maybe starting with co-facilitating or shadowing someone who has a bit more experience than you, so you can sort of pick up on cues from them. So yeah, I would say that the last takeaway is around, you kind of want to close this soft skills gap. Facilitation and workshop facilitation might be considered a soft skill, and we might not have that, might not be that many people advocating for that at the moment in the industry, but I do think it's the best way of building bridges with other departments and breaking down silos. So yeah, invest the time in learning the techniques that will help you in building that culture of experimentation. And thank you.